Donald Trump froze on live TV when Captain Traoré revealed what the world wasn't supposed to hear. Corruption, cover-ups, and a truth that stunned millions. Stay tuned, this changes everything. Global shockwaves. In a stunning live broadcast, Captain Ibrahim Traoré fearlessly exposed former U.S. President Donald Trump's hidden past, a revelation that left media houses scrambling and the internet on fire. What did Traoré say that Trump didn't want the world to hear? Was this an intentional power move or a global wake-up call? How will this affect U.S.-Africa relations moving forward? From Burkina Faso to Washington D.C., this revelation is changing narratives. Don't miss this eye-opening report that has left the global stage speechless. Subscribe for exclusive updates and comment your thoughts below. Let's talk truth, power, and justice. 1. What did Traoré say that Trump didn't want the world to hear? Context. Posts on X claim that Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's interim president since his 2022 coup, confronted Trump at a global leadership forum in New York City, delivering remarks that shocked or destroyed Trump's ego. Titles such as "Trump Furious as Ibrahim Traoré Destroys His Ego on Live TV" and "Donald Trump Tells Ibrahim Traoré to Sit Down Under Sir," but what Traoré said next suggest a dramatic exchange. However, these posts link to YouTube videos without providing specific quotes or verifiable details, and no reputable news sources confirm the event. The lack of concrete information requires speculation based on Traoré's known rhetoric and Trump sensitivities. Analysis of Traoré's likely statements. Traoré's anti-imperialist stance. Ibrahim Traoré, a 37-year-old military leader, has positioned himself as a Pan-Africanist and critic of Western influence in Africa. His speeches often emphasize sovereignty, self-reliance, and resistance to neo-colonialism, particularly targeting former colonial powers like France and, to a lesser extent, the United States. For example, Traoré has justified Burkina Faso's shift toward Russian alliances, citing dissatisfaction with Western counterterrorism efforts and resource exploitation. If a confrontation occurred, Traoré likely criticized U.S. foreign policy, accusing it of meddling in African affairs or exploiting resources, which aligns with his public statements at forums like the 2024 Russia-Africa Summit, where he praised Russian partnerships over Western ones. Trump sensitivities. Trump is known for reacting strongly to personal or national criticism, as seen in his public feuds, e.g., with Elon Musk in June 2025, and his Oval Office confrontation with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in March 2025, where he rebuked Zelensky for insufficient gratitude. If Traoré challenged Trump's leadership style, U.S. global dominance, or policies like tariffs affecting African economies, it could have provoked a defensive response. X posts suggest Trump told Traoré to sit down, indicating a perceived challenge to Trump's authority. Hypothetical content. Given the lack of specific quotes, Traoré's remarks likely included criticism of U.S. hegemony, accusing the U.S. of imposing unfair trade policies, such as Trump's tariffs, e.g., 10 to 25% on global trade partners, which could harm African economies reliant on U.S. markets. Resource exploitation, highlighting U.S. corporate interests in African minerals, e.g., Burkina Faso's gold, echoing his critiques of Western resource plundering. Sovereignty and non-interference, demanding that the U.S. respect African autonomy, possibly referencing Trump's reported interest in controlling resources like Greenland or Panama, which could be framed as imperialistic. Personal challenge. If Traoré directly questioned Trump's leadership or moral authority, it would align with the X post's sensational claims of destroying his ego. Why Trump might not want this heard. Undermining authority. Trump's public image relies on projecting strength and dominance, as seen in his claims of global leaders kissing his ass post-election. A public rebuke from a young African leader could embarrass him, especially if it gained traction on platforms like X. Exposing policy weaknesses. Criticism of U.S. trade or foreign policy could highlight the economic fallout of Trump's tariffs, which have already caused market volatility and strained relations with allies like Canada and the EU. Amplifying anti-U.S. sentiment. Traoré's remarks could resonate with Pan-Africanist movements, amplifying anti-American narratives in Africa, where leaders like Traoré, Mali's Assimi Goïta, and Niger's Abdourahmane Tiani are shifting toward Russia and China. Limitations. The absence of verifiable details in the X posts or web sources makes it impossible to confirm what Traoré said. The YouTube links suggest exaggerated or fabricated narratives designed to generate clicks, a common issue with social media-driven misinformation. Without primary sources, the analysis relies on Traoré's established rhetoric and Trump's documented reactions to criticism. Elaboration. If the encounter occurred, Traoré likely used the platform to assert Burkina Faso's sovereignty and critique U.S. influence, possibly accusing Trump of perpetuating neo-colonial policies. Such remarks would challenge Trump's narrative of global dominance, making them sensitive enough for him to want suppressed, especially if they were delivered publicly and gained international attention. However, the lack of corroboration suggests the incident may be overstated or fictitious, reflecting social media's tendency to amplify unverified claims. 2. Was this an intentional power move or a global wake-up call? Context. Determining whether Traoré's alleged statements were an intentional power move or a global wake-up call requires assessing his motives, the setting, and the broader geopolitical context. A power move implies a calculated effort to assert dominance or gain leverage, while a wake-up call suggests an intent to alert the world to systemic issues, regardless of personal gain. Intentional power move evidence supporting a power move. Traoré's domestic strategy. Traoré has used anti-Western rhetoric to consolidate power in Burkina Faso, rallying citizens against perceived foreign interference. Challenging Trump at a global forum would enhance his image as a fearless leader, appealing to Pan-Africanist supporters and aligning with his pivot to Russia and China. Regional influence. As a leader in the alliance of Sahel states, with Mali and Niger, Traoré seeks to position himself as a regional strongman. Confronting a U.S. president could elevate his status among anti-Western leaders, similar to how Mali's Goïta or Niger's Kiani have defied France. Provoking a reaction. By targeting Trump's ego, as suggested by X posts, Traoré could have aimed to provoke a public outburst, exposing Trump's volatility and weakening his global standing. This aligns with Trump's reaction to Zelensky, where he mocked a reporter and ended the meeting abruptly. Context. The alleged setting, a global leadership forum in New York, would be a high-profile stage for Traoré to assert himself. His military background and youth, born 1988, contrast with Trump's age and style, making a bold challenge a way to differentiate himself as a new generation leader. Global wake-up call evidence supporting a wake-up call. Pan-Africanist ideology. Traoré's speeches often call for African unity and resistance to Western dominance, as seen in his 2024 Russia-Africa summit remarks praising Russian support. His alleged statements could aim to alert African nations and the global South to resist U.S. policies like tariffs, which threaten developing economies. Highlighting inequities. By criticizing U.S. interference or resource exploitation, Traoré could be drawing attention to systemic issues in global trade and geopolitics, encouraging other nations to demand fairer treatment. Global audience. A New York forum would provide Traoré access to international media and leaders, amplifying his message. Beyond Burkina Faso. This aligns with his appearances at events like the UN General Assembly, where he has criticized Western hypocrisy. Context. The global economic fallout from Trump's tariffs, including a 10 to 25% duty on trading partners and 125% on China, has raised concerns about trade wars. Traoré's remarks could serve as a warning to African nations to diversify partnerships, as Burkina Faso has done with Russia and China. Balancing the two intent and impact. Traoré's actions likely combine both motives. A power move strengthens his domestic and regional standing, while a wake-up call aligns with his ideological goal of challenging Western hegemony. The sensational nature of the X posts suggests he aimed for maximum impact, but the lack of evidence makes it unclear whether the confrontation was planned or spontaneous. Trump's reaction. The claim that Trump told Traoré to sit down suggests a defensive response, indicating Traoré's remarks hid nerve. If intentional, this could reflect a calculated effort to exploit Trump's sensitivity to criticism, as seen in his feud with Musk. If a wake-up call, it would prioritize ideological goals over personal gain, though Traoré's rhetoric often serves both. Elaboration. Given Traoré's track record, his alleged remarks were likely an intentional power move to bolster his image as a defiant leader, while also serving as a wake-up call to rally African and global South nations against U.S. dominance. The choice of a U.S.-based forum suggests a strategic intent to confront Trump on his home turf, maximizing visibility. However, without verified details, the incident may be exaggerated, reflecting social media's role in amplifying unconfirmed narratives. If true, Traoré's actions align with his broader anti-imperialist agenda, balancing personal political gain with a call for global resistance. 3. How will this affect U.S.-Africa relations moving forward? Context. U.S.-Africa relations under Trump's second term, 2025-present, are shaped by his America First policy, including tariffs, reduced foreign aid, and a focus on resource deals, e.g., Ukraine's minerals. Burkina Faso, under Traoré, has shifted away from Western alliances, expelling French forces in 2023 and strengthening ties with Russia and China. The alleged confrontation could influence bilateral and regional dynamics, depending on its veracity and fallout. Potential impacts on U.S.-Africa relations: bilateral tensions with Burkina Faso, strained relations. If Traoré publicly criticized Trump, it could lead to diplomatic friction. The U.S. has already reduced engagement with Burkina Faso due to its 2022 coups and Russian alignment, suspending it from the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, in 2023. A public spat could further isolate Burkina Faso from U.S. aid or trade benefits. Trump's response. Trump's reaction to criticism, as seen with Zelensky, suggests he might retaliate with sanctions or public denunciations. However, Burkina Faso's limited economic ties with the U.S. trade was $147 million in 2023, reduce leverage, making symbolic gestures like travel bans more likely. Regional ripple effects, Sahel dynamics. Burkina Faso's leadership in the Alliance of Sahel states means Traoré's stance could influence Mali and Niger, both of which have also pivoted to Russia. A high-profile confrontation could embolden other anti-Western leaders, complicating U.S. counterterrorism efforts in the Sahel. The Pan-Africanist momentum. Traoré's remarks could resonate with African youth and Pan-Africanist movements, increasing skepticism of U.S. intentions. This aligns with growing African distrust of Western policies, as seen in protests against French bases in Senegal and Chad. Broader U.S.-Africa policy, trade and tariffs. Trump's tariffs, 10 to 25% on global partners, could harm African economies reliant on U.S. markets, such as Nigeria or Kenya. If Traoré's remarks highlighted this, they could prompt African Union, AU members to seek collective responses, like retaliatory tariffs or deeper ties with China. Reduced engagement. Trump's first term saw limited focus on Africa, with no visits and a controversial travel ban on Muslim-majority nations. A confrontation with Traoré could reinforce perceptions of U.S. disinterest, pushing African nations toward China, which invested $44 billion in Africa in 2024 compared to the U.S.'s $8 billion. Security cooperation. The U.S. has prioritized counterterrorism in Africa, but Burkina Faso's expulsion of Western forces signals a broader trend. Traoré's defiance could encourage other nations to reject U.S. military presence, as Niger did in 2024. Factors mitigating impact: lack of verification. If the incident is unconfirmed or exaggerated, its impact on U.S.-Africa relations may be minimal, limited to social media buzz rather than policy shifts. The absence of mainstream coverage suggests it may not have registered with U.S. policymakers. Trump's priorities. Trump's focus on domestic issues, e.g., tariffs, immigration, and major allies, e.g., UK, Japan, means Africa is likely a low priority. His administration may ignore Traoré's remarks to avoid elevating a minor player. Burkina Faso's isolation. Burkina Faso's small economy and Russian alignment limit its influence on U.S.-Africa relations. The U.S. is more likely to engage with larger economies like Nigeria or South Africa, where trade and security interests are greater. Long-term implications: deepening divide. A confirmed confrontation could solidify a divide between pro-Western African nations, e.g., Kenya, Ghana, and anti-Western ones, e.g., Burkina Faso, Mali, complicating U.S. efforts to counter Russian and Chinese influence. The AU may push for neutrality to avoid escalation. Economic realignment. African nations may accelerate diversification away from U.S. markets, as seen in Burkina Faso's gold trade with Russia and China. Trump's tariffs could exacerbate this, reducing U.S. economic leverage. Diplomatic opportunities. If Hichilema or other African leaders mediate, as Ghana's president is suggested to have done in ex-posts, it could open dialogue. However, Trump's transactional approach, as seen with Zelensky, suggests he may demand concessions for engagement. Elaboration. The alleged Traoré-Trump confrontation, if real, could strain Burkina Faso relations and embolden anti-Western sentiment in the Sahel, but its broader impact on U.S.-Africa relations is likely limited due to Burkina Faso's marginal role and the unverified nature of the incident. Trump's tariffs and disengagement from Africa already risk alienating the continent, and Traoré's remarks could amplify this by highlighting U.S. policy's adverse effects. However, Trump's focus on domestic priorities and major allies suggests he may dismiss the incident, while African nations continue shifting toward alternative partners like China and Russia. Long-term, U.S.-Africa relations depend more on economic and security policies than a single confrontation, but Traoré's defiance could inspire similar challenges if left unaddressed. Conclusion. What Traoré said, without verified details, Traoré likely criticized U.S. foreign policy, trade practices, or resource exploitation, aligning with his anti-imperialist rhetoric. Such remarks would challenge Trump's authority and image, explaining his alleged desire to suppress them. The ex-post sensational tone suggests exaggeration, but the claims fit Traoré's public stance. Power move or wake-up call. Traoré's alleged remarks likely served both purposes: a power move to enhance his domestic and regional standing as a defiant leader, and a wake-up call to rally African and global South nations against U.S. dominance. The New York setting suggests strategic intent, but the lack of evidence tempers this conclusion. Africa relations. The incident, if true, could strain Burkina Faso ties and encourage anti-Western sentiment in the Sahel, but its broader impact is limited by Burkina Faso's isolation and Trump's focus on other priorities. Africa relations are more likely to be shaped by tariffs and strategic competition with China and Russia than a single unverified confrontation. Limitations and recommendations. The reliance on inconclusive ex-posts highlights the need for critical scrutiny of social media claims. No mainstream sources confirm the event, suggesting it may be a fabricated or exaggerated narrative. For further clarity, primary sources like official statements, event transcripts, or reputable news coverage would be needed. If verified, the incident could mark a symbolic challenge to U.S. influence, but its immediate policy impact appears minimal.